Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. I'm Scott Hambrick.
I'm Karl Shute.
I think that we should name this show Karl Drops Out of School, a retrospective. Brett emailed me and he finished the Hobbs show. He said, great show. He hasn't said that about all of them. And I thought the Emerson show was great. So if Hobbs was great, shoot, watch out.
I don't always know if they're good. My wife is my filter for telling me if the shows are good. I told you that already. She goes out for walks in the neighborhood and she actually listens to me talk, but mostly through the podcast.
Right.
And she'll come back in and say, oh, that one was wonderful. She loved the Emerson one. So she's my bellwether.
Well, if there's anything that you want her to know or hear, we'll put it in this show here.
Melissa, I love you very much. I esteem you. I value you. You're a wonderful person. And I can't believe that you were foolish enough to marry me.
Trickery. So good. I'm glad she married you too.
Yeah.
If I can't have you, Karl, I'm glad it's her that does. So today, we're not going to talk about a book. Today, we're going to talk about Karl's career change that was about 1 year ago, a little more than a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Karl, what were you doing before you changed these careers?
I was teaching humanities and philosophy at one of the local colleges, and I had been doing that in some form for 20 years or thereabouts.
What does humanities mean?
Well, humanities, what it meant when I started, I don't know that I really want to name names. You could probably dig me up on Rate My Professor or something and figure out where I was. And that's a horrible website, by the way.
Never even heard of it.
No, it's where students go and complain about their professors anonymously. It's like YouTube comments for faculty.
Right.
It's just...
Sounds great.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But when I started, the humanities program was actually quite good. It's the remnant. So in Catholic colleges, there's another clue. In Catholic colleges, those are generally the places that still have left over some kind of liberal arts or humanities requirement. They are shrinking, and I think they're losing their way. And I think I saw that at the place where I was. When I got there...
I got to drill down more. Like, what does humanities mean? Like, is that what you yell when the Zeppelin catches on fire? Like, what does that even mean?
I would say, I would pronounce it differently and say it's the humanities. It's, I like the German word for it. I'm going to mispronounce it. Die Geisteswissenschaften. So it's the sciences of the Geist, of the spirit. That part of you that probably dogs don't have. So in German philosophy, Geist is like the transcendent bit of you. It's not the soul. It's the part where freedom is. So I would talk about this on like day one of class, that this is what we're talking about. This is not a biology class. This is a class about the sorts of creatures that have freedom, of which I guess it's only us. We're the only ones we know of. So
sometimes
history, philosophy, music, literature, all of that stuff is humanities. Only humans do it.
Ghost and Geist share a root?
Ja.
Yep, there you go.
Das stimmt. And German words are just fun.
They are.
So it started out, they had 4 humanities classes. There was an ancient one, then a medieval, and there was another one I can't remember, and a contemporary. And there were required texts that you had to do. So we actually had to do Virgil, which I appreciated. I've grown to love Virgil. And then we had some freedom, and I decided to do the Iliad, and that's what made me fall in love with Homer. That was 20 years ago. So I remember the very first class I had was the best one that I had there. It was a contemporary humanities class. We read Camus' The Plague, which is a horrible, wonderful book. You know, like Medea is a horrible, wonderful book. The Plague's a terrible, wonderful book about a plague in North Africa. Spoiler. And that class was fantastic. I still remember the kids. I remember the young men and women. And we got to the end, and I learned that I was going to be doing the ancient class, and I brought in the Iliad, and I read to them this was at the height of it was not too long after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And all sorts of military things going on. And I said, would you guys be interested in this? And I said, rage, sing goddess the rage of Peleus' son Achilles. And I read the first paragraph of it, and they nodded and said, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. So I did it the next semester, and just been digging into Homer ever since. But I thought the courses were good. They were so good, of course, that the college got rid of them and moved towards,
say it.
I'm trying to think of the word that they used for it. You wanted classes that were more global.
Genau.
Less classical.
Less Western.
That were more relevant. Yeah. And I think they're all entirely relevant. That's the thing. This is the thing. The Iliad is, well, first of all, what does relevant mean? Are you a human being? Do you have love and hate and rage and friendship and honor and all of these things? Then if you do, the Iliad is relevant to you.
Right.
And if you're chasing relevance, meaning currency, meaning 2019, you're chasing after a ghost. What are you going to read? The New York Times bestseller list and figure that's
Angela's Ashes.
Yeah. No, I've actually never read that one. So you want this to be a rambling podcast, right?
Sure. I just took my dad gave me a bottle of peanut butter whiskey.
Mm.
And I said, Dad, this is going to be horrific or pretty good. There's not going to be a tweener.
And which is it?
It's pretty good. It's like Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah.
It's going to take me most of this to get through this talk about the fall and decline of.
Yeah. Well, Angela's Ashes is about all these poor Irish people, right?
Yep.
And my sister-in-law, who's an English teacher, said, have you ever read that one? That one's so good. And I told her some of the stories of my Irish ancestors. No, I don't need to read it.
Yeah.
No, I just go look up the family tree.
It's like me reading the Snopeses.
Yeah.
Faulkner. Yeah.
Yeah. So it had a good thing going for a while, and then they went away from it. At a different place of higher education, I remember being in a faculty meeting, and they were talking. It seems they're always talking about the core curriculum and reworking it. And I remember somebody raising an objection at a list of books that were proposed for the students to read. And the objection was, what are they going to have us do? Study truth, beauty, and goodness? In a dismissive kind of sneering way? And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, what would you rather have them study? Falsehood, ugliness, and evil?
Maybe. Don't be putting people on the spot about that stuff, Karl.
Well, so you want to figure out what the point of a school is. So this whole question started with why I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it anymore because it's not rewarding to me, and I don't think valuable to the students. And I'm just kind of rambling on why.
You didn't think it was valuable to the students either?
No, I think they're wasting their time.
So after 20 years, you bowed out when?
Well, it's when I had been doing the adjunct game, which this is something for you guys to know out there in podcast land. If you're sending your children to an expensive college, that a lot of their classes will be taught by adjunct professors who are paid peanuts per class. They don't have tenure. They drive in. Some of them will drive in 3 or 4 places, and they'll teach all the required courses because the full-time faculty don't want to or don't have time. So if you're spending $60,000 a year to send your kid to Miskatonic University,
St. Swithins,
you're not necessarily getting $60,000 worth of instruction for your kids. So the money was terrible. The students weren't reading anymore. I remember one day I asked, has anybody read the book? Not one hand.
Yeah.
Not one hand went up. The reason you get into this, the reason you do something as foolish as go get a PhD in philosophy.
Karl, we should use I statements.
The reason I went into this and I went to get a PhD in philosophy is because I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. I met Socrates, and I'd like to show it to other people, and not just him, but other people too. And so if I'm going to do it in a university, I want to go in a classroom where people have read the stuff and they come in champing at the bit, ready to talk about it and caring about it and thinking that, my life matters. And so philosophy is all the leftover questions that the sciences can't answer. Who am I? What can I hope for? Kant formulates it something like that. What should I do? What's my eternal goal, or what's the goal of my life? And even if the answers are negative, there isn't one. That's a philosophical question, and it's an important one. I think it's an important one. Aristotle says in the Ethics, when he's talking about the ultimate good, the telos, if you don't know what the target is, you're not going to hit it.
Right.
You're like an archer not knowing where the target is. You might hit it. You might get lucky. And the question of what happiness is, if you don't have any idea what happiness is, how are you going to get it? But you don't study that in a biology class. It doesn't fit in a PowerPoint slide.
Right. So you're not a materialist?
No. Well, sort of, but no.
Me too.
Just because it's material doesn't mean doesn't also have a spiritual aspect.
Okay, that's some Weasley stuff. We'll get that on a future show.
Well, no, is there such a thing as matter? Is matter just matter? Is it inert matter? When we talk about materialism, do we just mean atoms bumping into each other? You get into problems with trying to map that into meaning. No, I guess I'm not a materialist. I'll quit weaseling.
Yeah, we will do some stuff on that. Yeah, so you didn't find that that your job there allowed you to do what you thought you were going to do, right?
Right.
You're talking to people that weren't reading the books, and they didn't share your passion for it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the interesting things you said that you didn't think it was valuable to them, and that they were wasting their time. So,
yeah,
about a year ago, you bowed out.
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
I feel great. Well, because I had some other opportunities that I think are not a waste of time. Our friend Sully once talked about how when he got into strength training, that he had been an ER doc, and when you're an ER doc, you're putting the pieces back together.
So this is Dr. Jonathan Sullivan, who wrote a book called The Barbell Prescription, and he was an ER doc in Detroit. He calls it Detroit Gun and Knife Club.
Yeah, Knife and Gun Club. And Sullivan, Sully Dog, is one of the finest people I have ever met in my life.
Yep.
But you're going to the ER and you're seeing the disasters, and you're not actually fixing anything. You're patching it up. And he went away and opened a gym. He said at one point that this was the most doctory thing he'd ever done in his life. He's actually doing what doctors are supposed to do, which is to heal. But healing on the front end. And my response was, once I got into coaching, and well, we also added, well, this grew out of the coaching, the online great books. It's the most teachery thing I've ever done.
Teachery?
Well, I'm making up words.
Is it like strategery?
Yeah. So me standing in front of a class of students who don't want to be there and have not read the book, and putting things on the board and then testing their recollection of them, it's not teaching. They're not learning anything. They're not recollecting anything. They're fulfilling a function and getting a piece of paper. It's not what it's supposed to be. It is not an intellectual adventure. It is not a shared pursuit of truth. And that's what I wanted it to be.
And it was that earlier on, you think?
It was more that. This is anecdotal. I think there's been a decline, and I'm not blaming the students for this, but I think there's been a decline in the quality of the classes. My best class was the first one, and then I had a few high points, and then for the most part, it was trailing off. I can give you some anecdotes on that. They used to read. They used to know some stuff. Now they hardly read. It's probably the cell phone.
Yeah. It causes me problems.
Yeah, they're not equipped to read. And I'm not blaming them. Well, they are the way they are. If there's blame, it's somewhere else. But they're not ready to read anything. And they don't have any background knowledge. Like, if I were to mention, I remember the theology professor talking about how, she wants to teach a course in Christian theology, but she can't because they don't even know the stories. They don't even know the prodigal son, for example. The prodigal what? They never heard of it. So you can't actually talk about what's going on in the story. You have to just teach the story.
Right.
So there's very shallow, no background, not very much ability to read. And I would say also there is a reluctance to take a position.
Yeah.
So I remember in a metaphysics class, I've told you this story off the air. There was a young man.
What's metaphysics?
Metaphysics. It's all this stuff behind the physics. It's what needs to be true in order for there to be a reality. The problem is you can't look at it because it's behind the reality. So it's like trying to figure out what you look like without having a mirror.
The study of being, qua being?
That's part of it, yeah. Cause and effect.
It's the ontology stuff.
Yeah. And we were talking, and the young man was coming to some conclusions on his own. All I was doing was pointing at stuff. All I was doing was asking him questions. That's what I viewed my role in the classroom to be anyway. And if he followed his own thoughts, he was going to end up saying, well, yes, there is such a thing as truth. Capital T, truth. Okay? That's where his own thoughts were leading him, not me.
And his tongue swelled up, and he couldn't say it.
Right, and he couldn't say it. And I said, well, why won't you draw the conclusion? And he looked around the room, and he said, well, I wouldn't want to be incorrect. He wouldn't want to be incorrect. He was worried that he was going to say an unpopular opinion. So if you think, it's not free inquiry.
It's not just that guy being unwilling to, put a stake in the ground. It's also the fact that he knows that people that put a stake in the ground get their ass kicked.
Yeah.
And I can't blame a 19, 20, I don't know how old this young man was, for not wanting to get swarmed.
Right. The university is not a place for free inquiry. And if you have, I used to say in the beginning of class that this is a safe space for unsafe ideas. And I do my best to try to get him to talk. And if you are on a certain end of the political spectrum, you can say whatever you want and you will get rewarded. You'll get student leadership positions. Professors will be very proud of you and will nominate you for things. If you are on the other end of the political spectrum, you're just not going to talk about it.
Yep.
It's very univocal. There's just one acceptable view. And if you don't have it, you better be quiet.
Univocal.
One voice.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be part of that. That's not the goal. The goal in a classroom is not for me to enforce I have political views. I have opinions. I have lots of them. But in a classroom, that's not my job. My job is not to take your kids and make them think like I do. My job, as I conceived it, was to take your kids and make them think.
So you left. They wouldn't let you do it. And so now you get to do more teachery than you did. What are you doing now, Karl?
Well, now I am doing this online great books thing. Which, should we talk about that?
Well, let's talk about the barbell training, the podcast. I think all of it, right? It's a package. Your life is now a package.
Well, I want to back up just a little bit. It's not that somebody said, Karl, you can't be yourself.
A confluence of things made it hard to apply your craft the way you wanted to.
Right. And the poor students that just were not equipped to be there. You couldn't even write it. Well, we didn't even talk about the writing, and we were going to judge them by writing, but they don't know how to do a topic sentence.
Yeah.
It's just incomprehensible stuff that you would get. And, they should go, they should leave and they should go learn a trade. Most of them.
Yeah, I was just, I'm working on recording a little piece that I think people need to read.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a friend about it today, and I said, whether I like it or not, we're in a post-literate society. People, even if they can read, by and large, would prefer to listen to it or watch a YouTube video.
Right.
I don't know that that's your specific university's fault. Maybe, but you're dealing with that. Like if you're gonna work in a humanities department anywhere, you're dealing with kind of a post-literate people, which doesn't mean illiterate. It's some of that Marshall McLuhan. The media is the medium is the message stuff. These mediums have changed the way people's minds work and the way information is dealt with.
Yeah. When I first started the place I spent the last 15 years, there was an older woman. I liked her a lot. She was teaching a few of the adjunct classes. She would come in. She was cantankerous, and she would get mad at the students not being up to her standards. And her standards were high. She was an accomplished, academic woman from a long time ago. I decided I wasn't going to get mad at the student. They show up the way they are, and they are the way they are because of a whole bunch of other stuff. They didn't decide to come to college not being able to read a book. They're made that way. Why are they made that way? That's a whole other podcast, I suppose. Remember we read Marcel, and he talked about with technology, we get the technology before we have the virtue to deal with it.
Yep.
So we have screens and internet and cell phones and all sorts of stuff. We're just throwing it at people and presuming that everything's going to be great. Yeah, it might not. It might not, right? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Human history is it's two statements. The first one is, what could it hurt? And then the second one is, how was I supposed to know?
Right. This is very interesting. People that listen to this and follow me any at all know I'm very critical of the whole university thing nowadays. But what we're talking about right now points at causes that aren't university. Right.
It's prior to the university.
Yeah, it's prior. And the cultural milieu doesn't create 18-year-olds that are ready to go. I mean, let's say you were at a university that had an enormous amount of integrity and was dialed in on the mission of teaching people to think and, giving them the education that befits people who would be free, right?
Mm-hmm.
That have hell with it because the kids don't know what the topic sentence is,
Yeah, so there's problems that predate the university for sure. Boy, I think your kids would be better off if you just got rid of your televisions. And
I know that
you didn't hand them a cell phone and you limited their internet time and you just had books in your house. I bet you they'd be the smartest kids in the neighborhood. Try it. Prove me wrong. If you do that, dear listener, and it doesn't work, you can say I told you so. But just get rid of it all.
Yeah.
And give your kids some room to develop their mind. If you have so much noise all the time, when do they ever think? And so it's not a surprise that they're not used to thinking. The universities have their problems as well. If we're in an age where, like that gentleman from the one school I was at says truth, beauty, goodness, well, then what's the point of a university?
Falsehood, ugliness, and evil.
Okay, so if you're with us, you're going to read Protagoras. And in the beginning of Protagoras, Socrates and his buddy, this is young Socrates, they're standing on the doorstep of the house where Protagoras is staying. Protagoras is a famous university professor. And Socrates is saying to Hippocrates, are you sure you want to go in? What does he teach? And he puts it this way, you're going to entrust your soul to this man. What's he going to put in it?
Because ideas go to the soul.
Yeah, whatever the soul is, that's where the ideas go.
Yep.
Maybe you ought to think. So maybe when you go to the admissions meeting and you go for the interview at Miskatonic, and the admissions person comes out and says, well, we'd like to welcome you to our college. Let me show you the gym and the pool and the dining hall. You say, hold on, wait a minute. What is virtue? Can virtue be taught? You're charging me $60,000 a year to make me a better person. Well, what is a better person?
Now, wait. Are any of these colleges actually representing that as the mission?
Well, why else what are they selling?
Credentials.
My alma mater is $60,000 a year.
Credentials. A good living.
Oh, that's a whole lot of money for that.
I get it.
Yeah, I skipped your other question. We can go back to that. So what happened was, been working for Barbell Logic online coaching since the very beginning. I'm one of the original people. I was very fortunate to be in the room when the thing started. I'm not as original as you, because you were with Reynolds Strong. So that gave me an opportunity to do barbell coaching and make some money and actually help people, which is very rewarding. But one of the things that happened, like within the first month, was this guy Hambrick sent me a message. Hey, so I was looking for Latin books. Do you have any ideas for Latin books?
Yeah, something like that.
And I gave you some recommendations. Like, who the heck is Scott Hambrick? And it turns out Scott Hambrick is a guy who's very, very interested in the same things that I'm interested in, and was running Great Books things out of his house. And we ran, and people were saying, well, how can I do this? And you got the idea of this might be something we could provide to people who can't do it out of their homes. And I was happy to be able to help with that.
You are a catalyst.
That's like that molecule that has the right shape to put other molecules next to each other. You're
like nickel or platinum. You help give birth to these things. You're a midwife to online businesses.
Well, that's Socrates, right?
Yeah. So now you're teaching people how to squat and take care of their bodies and get stronger and excel in the physical virtues.
Mm-hmm.
You lead seminars, and you've done a great deal to set the overall direction of the online Great Books business too. The handbook, our standards of conduct you wrote, some other stuff in there you wrote, and I need to go attribute those things. I failed to do that, but I need to go and give you credit for those.
I was looking at the Instagram for the last membership drive thinking, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I think I wrote that.
You've taught us and our members that we don't talk about, the discourse is about, and dialectics is really about, friendship and goodwill.
Yeah.
And how to talk to each other in that way to support that. And
right.
You gave us some simple rules, like don't talk about living politicians. Dead ones are fine. We could talk about Churchill all night.
Bismarck.
Yeah, Bismarck's great. No Trudeau. You've set the tone for our seminars, I think, in a way that you probably aren't aware of. That's really great, and the people that do this stuff with us love it. And you've also, from the very beginning, said that everybody that works and leads seminars or even helps with social media or anything at all that we do needs to embody the process.
Yeah.
They need to do the thing that we do, and we make them do it. Actually, we don't make them do it. They do it.
Right. Well, what's our late? We're just getting into Aristotle now, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be so fun. I want to do all the seminars.
You want to do all the Aristotle seminars?
Well, no, I want to do, I can't do all of them, but there's not a book on the list that I want to skip.
Yeah.
I want to have done all of the books on the list. It's a great conversation. I want the whole conversation.
Don't be Bogarting all the Aristotle. And I think everyone that leads seminars wants to do all of them, wants to partake in every one of these books. Some people hate Medea, Euripides Medea. But I have a friend who is in my home group, and he just went and read Medea, and he called. He's like, "This is the most wonderful thing I've ever read in my life." Horrible, wonderful thing.
It's really good. It's really good. I was talking with Thomas Miras. He was in Chicago, and we had a little get together. He's very much into poetry, and I'm not as much, but I think everybody should write bad poetry. There was another guy at the table who was actually a poet, and he said, "Explain that. Do you mean that they should write badly?" No. I mean, you should try to write good poetry and understand it's probably going to be bad.
Yeah, it's like jazz. If you take a break, I mean, if it's your 16 bars, don't be afraid of it being bad. You got to go.
Yep, you got to do it. And what do you get out of that? What you get out of it is, I used to go to the jam sessions in Milwaukee occasionally and bring my horn and, all right, take a couple choruses of Green Dolphin Street. If you're lousy, they'll change key on you and
Right.
see if you can follow. And maybe you are lousy, but maybe you can hang. But in order to be able to do that, now you appreciate jazz. Now you know what people are doing. Now you have a whole world of enjoyment opened up to you. So you write that really bad sonnet to your loved one, and you struggle over it, and you're searching for rhymes, and maybe the meter limps, and you don't quite do the job, and it's not the greatest poem in the world. But now you know what a poem is. Now you've got a whole world of literature opened up to you that you didn't before. So you got to read all this stuff because it's opening up worlds for you. Otherwise, what are you going to know? You're going to know what's on your cell phone screen. Prepackaged.
So, Carl.
Yes, Scott.
This is more teachery.
Yeah.
You were in Slack the other night and you said, poetry slam. Let's hear your doggerel. And, a few people jumped in there, which was neat.
So, there was some really good stuff in there.
I was scared to do it. I didn't do it. I wasn't scared, but I was like, that's too much work. And I didn't, but I'll get in one of those. I mean, that's an exercise in rhetoric, right? Getting these people to express themselves and through little things like that. And certainly people that actually read the books, and then discussions that, are 2 hours instead of the hour 10 or whatever you get in your university environment. Mm-hmm. I think you're getting to do more teachery than you used to. Tell me this, though. Is it because the people that come to it are ready? Is it because we're doing a better thing? You know what I mean? What? Why is it better?
Why is it better? It's self-chosen. People don't. Why do people go to college?
Because their aunt told them that they'll be wasting their life if they don't.
Right. Everybody goes to college now. If you don't go to college, you're a failure. College is high school part 2. It's not something you do because you want to talk about great literature or even seek the heights of a profession. It's the thing you do because you're 18 and you have to get out of the house. What are you going to do? The people are older. I think we probably ruin, most of them are older. We ruin literature, philosophy, all of that stuff by shoving it at teenagers who aren't quite full grown yet.
Socrates says we don't even bother with it until they're 30.
Yeah. I had some opportunities to teach classes for nurses. So what we would do for the nursing cohorts in the Chicago area, we would offer them 5-week classes that would count for a whole semester. And it's kind of make-believe. You can't really do that. But we would try because I think they paid the full semester of tuition. I don't know. But I love those classes.
Give it the old college try.
Yeah, I love those classes. And I would compress it as much as I could. I loved it. It was mostly women, a few guys, mostly women, a bit older, about 40 or so. And we're going to come in and talk about the Iliad, or I used to love to do Philoctetes, which is a Sophocles play about a really annoying patient. Well, no, it's about a guy who's sick, and his sickness is annoying to everybody else, and all the nurses would enjoy that one. What did we do? We did Lincoln Douglas debates, but they would read it. They would show up having read it, which I loved. And the 19, 20-year-olds just wouldn't.
Yeah.
Or not very many of them would. I'm going to diversion. Okay. I had one semester where I offered students extra credit for every book that they read. 1 point.
1 percentage point right on top.
Yeah. No questions asked. All you have to do is show up and talk to me about the book and prove to me that you read it. And I was just going to ask them a few questions about it. And you know what I would have done? I would have calculated how many points I needed to get an A.
That's the only thing I would have done.
I would have read books and I would have never gone to class. I left that loophole in so they could do it. And it was interesting because some students got it and they would do it and they would pile on books and get 110% in the class. A whole bunch of kids could not get themselves to read a book.
Yeah.
For free extra credit. the nurses would show up and they had read the stuff. Plus, they're working in hospitals. They know about life and death in a way that most of the younger people don't. Most of them were suburban kids coming in from a comfortable situation and so hadn't had a lot of drama in life and death stuff. Some of them did. I remember a girl who'd come from Poland just berating the rest of the students on, you don't understand communism. My parents grew up under it. We fled from it. But most of them didn't have any experience of that kind of stuff. The nurses did. And so the discussions were fantastic because they'd lived and they'd actually do the work. And the people that show up at Online Great Books are a whole lot more like the nursing students than the traditional college student who shows up just because it's a thing to do.
Yeah.
They value what they're going to get out of it. They're here because they want something. They know they're missing something and they want something. The stumbling block that I've seen is people who say, well, I don't know if I'm smart enough.
Yeah.
Which, you're smart enough. If you can read and you can have an opinion and you can back up your opinion with reasons, show up. This is for you. This is for you.
There's no grade. There's no diploma. It's strictly for you. It's for you to get what you can from it. The end.
Yeah. I like that it's not credentialism. I think that would be a dangerous thing were we to become a degree granting institution.
Ugh.
It's like this is a terrible analogy. The pretty girl with the rich father. Why is anybody talking to her? Is it because of her? Or is it because, billions of dollars? Well, why are they showing up here? It's to talk about the books. It's for us.
There's no question. It's about the books because the student union sucks at Online Great Books. The dating scene is poor.
Yeah, we're not a party school.
No, we're not.
We're not even a school.
No, it's the university.
We're maybe an academy or a porch.
I like the porch academy. That's good.
The academy was a grove.
Yeah,
it's just a bunch of trees, and you'd go hang out there. The Lyceum, Aristotle School, was another grove. So they had this one word that they were called. If you are an Aristotelian, you are a peripatetic. So peri meaning around, like periscope, and pateo meaning I walk. So they were the walking around ones, because when Aristotle would teach, he would just walk through the grove and you'd have to follow him. And so you have to imagine Nick and McKee in ethics. He's telling you that as he's walking around.
Every time I think of that, I think of him doing that Groucho Marx walk. Well, Karl, yeah. I'm glad you dropped out of school.
Me too.
Now, let us not forget, you probably get to say things about books and draw attention to these good books for more people than you did in your entire career in one of these shows.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you consider this to be part of your teachery?
The podcast? Yeah, well, what I want to do, it's all I ever wanted to do, was point to true, beautiful, and good things, and then step aside. That's the whole goal. It's why I'm a little uncomfortable with the show all about Karl, or why Karl dropped out, or whatever we're going to title this one, because it's not about me. It's about other stuff. So, for example, my wife came in the other day and said, I got to read Emerson. And I'm like, yes, that was the whole point of that.
Yeah.
There's greatness out there. You should go find it. And hopefully we're pointing it out to you. And that's what I think a humanities, liberal arts, philosophy professor ought to be. It's not, let me tell you everything I think. It's, let me help you discover.
Yeah. I like teachery. It might be that thing that you're talking about, right? You say that it's me that said if somebody gets caught teaching, they get fired. And I think I have said it, but you say it a whole lot more than I do. We never want to, tell people what to think about these books, but we can talk about what we think in an honest way. We want to model how to talk about them, maybe, and draw attention to them. So maybe that is teachery.
Sure. It's not teaching, it's teachery. The craft of pointing to beautiful things. That's what it's about. I remember once, this is one of the proudest moments of my teachering career. A student came up to me and said, "Do you believe in the Greek gods?" She didn't know.
She didn't know if you did. That's perfect.
Because I'm talking about Zeus as if he's a real person, and I'm trying to make him make sense and show you how Zeus could be real and how the Greeks weren't morons for believing in Zeus, and say, if you want to meet Zeus, go stand out in a field in a thunderstorm. You'll meet Zeus.
You do that, though. You talk about hobbits and elves and stuff like they're real. And it's because you believe in all of that stuff.
Well, sort of. Disney's been remaking all their movies, and the one that they did well was Cinderella. And Cinderella's talking to her mom before she dies, spoiler, and her mom says, "I believe everything." And I thought that was a good line.
It sounds like the Devil Mouse.
The Devil Mouse.
Disney, yep.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. When I'm reading it, I believe it.
Right. Just suspend your beliefs. It's okay.
Yeah, but I like that she didn't know, and I like that nobody seemed to have me pegged on a political team.
Yeah.
Nobody could figure it out. I like that. I know a bunch of other professors where it's real obvious. You know, it's like Emerson said, if I know your sect, I know your argument.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's not the way it should be. It shouldn't be transmission of a settled way of thinking from one person to another. It should be thinking.
Well, you've done a good job in showing us all how to think about thinking about these things and set the tone for so many of these seminars. And, you know, when people come to Online Great Books and they start reading and they encounter you in Slack or you in the seminar, you lead the way for them and it makes them better. I appreciate it more than you would possibly know.
Well, thanks. You know, because we tried to do this. Some friends of mine and I tried to do this in a different form, in a traditional college form, and it didn't fly. And if you just sit back and think, and you should do this, we've got upwards of 500 people reading great books. We have more people go through Homer already than, I mean, how many does the what's the program called at University of Chicago?
The basic program.
Yeah. How many do they have? How many are at St. John's? You know, and not that we're bringing it to more people than would have gotten it. And it's stunning to me that this thing exists. And it's a great thing. It's like, I told you my 5-step plan.
I know of this plan.
Yeah. So my 5-step plan is to step 1, lift weights.
Check.
Step 2, teach people to lift weights.
Check.
Step 3, read books.
Check.
Step 4, talk to people about books.
Check.
Step 5, profit. Or at least don't go broke.
At least don't go broke. That's good. We'll be at 1,000 soon doing this stuff. I have no doubt in my mind. It's pretty astounding. And couldn't have done all of that stuff without you. Thank you for taking the leap and jumping out of the school boat, swimming out here and beyond the breakers.
Well, thanks for sending that message and pulling me into your orbit.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I got a friend, Dick. My friend Dick. He's like, yeah, Hambrick, this was 15 years ago. You know, you need to take up, some hobby like painting or, whatever, express your creativity. I'm like, no, man, that's what business is. That's what small business is. You make things that weren't there before. They're not paintings and they're not statues or songs. But the whole thing's been it's been a creative exercise for sure. It's doing all right. But if you listen to this and this is compelling to you whatsoever, go read these books. we've been doing these podcasts, we try to give you a heads up about what we're going to read next so you can read ahead of us. We always want people to encounter the books before they encounter somebody else's encounter. So go read these darn things. Go read them on your own. Next week's show is going to be about Dorothy Sayers' essay, The Lost Tools of Learning. Go read that.
So good.
So good. Then we're going to read, we're going to talk about Plutarch's How a Man May Become Aware of His Progress in Virtue. So you can go read those things and, do this on your own. Rope some of your friends in and have them read them with you. And if you don't have friends, or if you don't have friends that will read them with you, come read them with us.
Or if you just think you want to hang out with us, come read them with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'd be glad to have you. Get on the mailing list, right?
Oh, well, yeah, you can go get on the mailing list. It's you go to onlinegreatbooks.com and you can join the little VIP mailing list. And when we open enrollment next time, as a listener of the show here, you can use the promo code OGB podcast to get 25% off your first 3 months. Because we need you to do it. Not because the business needs you to, but because not enough people are. We need more leaven.
Yeah.
I think we flogged this dog. Thank you guys so much for listening. And don't forget, you've got to go read The Lost Tools of Learning by one Dorothy Sayers for next week. We'll talk to you then.